I look down upon the dead and feel myself thinning, expanding, blossoming like a flower. I see Nuru's light pouring down from my raised hand, and then I blink and no longer sense my hand, my arm, or my body. I am filled with light. I am the light. My ancestors are within me. I mean, they are quite literally my DNA, my flesh and bone. And when I see these mounds here at the African burial ground, I know that these are my ancestors. My name is Zetta Elliott, and I'm an assistant professor in the Center for Ethnic Studies at Borough of Manhattan Community College, and I'm also the author of 3 books for young readers. Ship of Souls is my second novel for young readers, and I just always thought, you know, it would be so amazing to do something around the Revolutionary War, something around the soldiers that died in what is now Prospect Park. And I started to get a number of different signs. I found some cowrie shells in the street, and I found out that when they were excavating at Ground Zero, they actually found an 18th century ship. So I had my ship that was underground, and I just needed passengers who were underground, and that led me here to the African burial ground, where up to 15,000 free and enslaved Africans were buried until about 1794. It was important to me when I started writing for young readers that I include stories that had a magical element, but didn't necessarily take them out of their urban environment, but gave multicultural children a chance to have the same amazing adventures as other kids. And I find that that's one of the most challenging but also the most rewarding aspects of teaching and writing about slavery, is to create characters who are sympathetic not simply because they're suffering and they're victims, but characters that young people can relate to because they can imagine themselves in that scenario. Heads bowed, arms folded across their chests like mummies from ancient Egypt. They are skeletons. Bleached bones glow like polished ivory in the dark, but they sway with the grace of 15,000 dancers. As we draw closer, we see among their bones strands of blue beads, gold buttons, cowrie shells, and coins, all the reminders of home that have endured over the centuries. It's important to me to start writing realistic urban fiction so that young readers open up the book and recognize the landscape and recognize themselves in those characters, right? It becomes the mirror. And then in addition to the mirror, you present the window. So you start with something they recognize, and then once you've got them hooked, then you can get them to continue looking and searching, and they'll go with you. I work very closely with the Brooklyn Public Library. They're absolutely fantastic, and they really believe it's important to bring writers of color into school so that children can see that African American writers exist and that we write, you know, engaging material. I lift my head above the dry brown leaves and look for the root I must have tripped over. Then something pinches my calf, and I cry out, mostly in surprise. Dee, you all right? I hear Nyla's voice, but before I can even think of an answer, something bites my leg. I roll over and find the weirdest trap I've ever seen, clamped down on my left calf. It looks like the jawbone of a wild animal or a really big dog, except that along with pointy teeth, the jaw is lined with curved bits of metal and the sharp talons of a large bird. As a writer, I don't just speak for myself. I don't just write for my own personal enrichment. I have a debt to pay to the others, to the ancestors, those that came before me, especially that made a place for me in this city. Because I'm an immigrant, I had the choice to come and live in New York, but my ancestors, you know, they didn't have a choice, and they made the best of a really difficult situation. It's really important for young people to recognize that they're carrying on a tradition that was started hundreds of years ago, if not thousands of years ago. You don't just emerge spontaneously on the spot. And you know who your parents were, you probably know your grandparents, but there are many nameless and faceless and voiceless people who sacrificed a great deal in order for you to be here today.